Hey guys, Champaign Room Hoops Podcast, Season 2, Episode 7. All things Illini Hoops on the way. Stay tuned. I'm proud to tell you all that Champaign Room Hoops Podcast has partnered with Underdog Fantasy. On top of that, I've got even better news. They will match your first deposit up to $100. The only way for you to get in on this special is by downloading their app and using our code CRH24. Again, that's CRH24. Even if you've already registered but haven't deposited, you can still use the promo. When you do, Underdog will match your first deposit up to $100. What are you waiting for? Get started today and come play along with us all season long at Underdog Sports. Again, code CRH24. What's up, everybody? We are back for another edition of Champaign Room Hoops Podcast as part of Beyond the Big Ten Podcast Network. You can check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere you get your podcasts, and on YouTube at Beyond Big Ten. Also, make sure to follow along on all social media, Twitter, IG, and TikTok with the handle Beyond Big Ten. I am former Illini point guard Sam Maniscalco, joined by do-it-all swingman, the original Mr. 3&D, the original Mr. Glue Guy himself, Billy Cole at BuckWildBill33. And I should mention Billy as one of Peoria Richwood's finest because another special guest kind enough to join us today, current Illinois basketball play-by-play radio man. But more importantly, another one of Peoria Richwood's all-timers, Doug Altenberger. Doug, thanks for carving out the time.
Yeah, Sam. And I was going to call you Terry. It's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Billy, you want to give a little bit more formal introduction for Doug?
Yeah, I think this is, as we've tried to shape what our listeners want to listen to, me and Sam, instead of hearing our opinions go back and forth every week, we've been trying to bring you guys a lot more guests. As we were thinking who we could get on, Doug popped in my mind. I used to call him Uncle Doug growing up, but really for you young Illini fans out there that might not know, this is a true Illini legend, over 1,200 points as an outside scorer without a three-point line, drafted by the Bulls in the 80s. Made a brief cameo in The Last Dance, if I'm not mistaken. So we just have an even more special for me, like Sam said, a Peoria Richwoods, maybe one of the starters of the Peoria pipeline. So it's a special little 30, 45 minutes we've got for you today. And there's no one better to get his opinions on this year's Illini team. And we've got a good team. But Doug, I'm interested just to kick us off. So far in the season, there's a lot that's transpired, a lot that's happened. Obviously, we've got a top 15 team, but what's your just general outlook on what's transpired so far in the season?
I would say that this team has a good vibe, and some of the transfer portal guys that we can talk more about it a little bit later, but have been a good fit for the team. And I think these guys are coming in with the attitude of winning first and whatever it takes. So being around the team, it's been a real joy. Last year's team, I think sometimes they even tried too hard. You guys are players. You know how it is. When I played, it was called chemistry. Brad talks about being connected and being on the same page, and these guys are. I think, they're still, offensively, they've gotten a lot better since the beginning of the season. I think defensively, both you guys, when you see a game, a little bit different than fans because you're used to coaches yelling at us when we're making mistakes. Defensively, especially that middle ball screen has been a real, Maryland exposed us pretty badly. And a lot of teams built off there, like Northwestern. They did that the whole game, especially with Boo Buie. And so that's an area where, they need to improve, definitely in that interior defense. Teams are getting downhill on, but they're still a really good team. The season now, we're getting close to March, and the older teams and teams that can shoot the basketball in the NCAA tournament are the teams that seem to do well and be able to get stops. And I think that's one area where it would be nice to see our guys improve in that area down the stretch, get a little better, tougher defensively. And I think Brad's talked about that, especially after the Michigan game.
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, I think I saw his post game where he said they didn't even practice offense for the last 2 days, and I was I think that's smart because you were watching them slide down the defensive rankings. They were in the top 5 in December, and then down into 50th range right now, and that's how you're gonna. It's the boring answer that no one wants to talk about on a podcast because it's just expected if you're a good team to play defense. But they've got the athletes, they've got the bodies. I think one thing, Sam, I'm interested, and Doug touched on it, but we brought it up when Bruce was on the podcast, right? And that's the fact that they would switch anything against anybody. And it seemed like they've calmed down on that a little bit. It seemed like they were giving, the Boo Buies of the world any matchup that they wanted at any point of the game. And so not only did they calm down on it, I noticed Luke Goody, he was kind of last guy off the bench for the players that played against in their last game against Michigan. So, we all know he could shoot. He's got to make shots, but he also has to be able to, if they're going to play like that, he's got to be able to guard 1 through 5. And it just doesn't seem like he's got that in him at this point in his career.
Yeah, I mean, all the teams in the Big Ten switched. That's a new. That's not new, but if you don't need to switch, you shouldn't switch. But because of this team's length, and because the success we had up until let's call sometime in January, it was working, but now that's the thing about once you get into Big Ten play. I mean, the coaches, everybody's got a great staff. Everybody's got all the video, and once they start to see something, a trend or whatever, so teams are taking advantage of it. And the other thing is we don't double team in the post, which there's a lot of argument there, and that's hurt us as well. But I think watching a little bit of the Maryland game right now, it looks like we have doubled down a couple times with the guard coming over the top just to hedge a little bit or show a new look. So I've just seeing that briefly while we're on air here. So, I mean, the bottom line is this team can make a good run in the tournament. They've got Shannon back. I thought he is finally. I did the Ohio State game in Columbus, and he played tremendous. And it seems like he's built off that game and has got his confidence back. And I'd like to see him play a little better defense as well.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like he's got his legs back finally after that, brief hiatus he took. He looks more in rhythm, more comfortable. Doug, you mentioned, and this has been a consistent theme with Bill and I talking on the podcast, obviously since the transfer portal stuff is so crazy every summer. We talked a lot about last year's team and how, before the season, the transfer portal looked like a great get for the Illini, and things didn't just pan out for obvious reasons that we can get into another time. But this year, the portal, maybe not as, high profile of guys that Brad has put together, but we've talked continuously about fit, and you used the word chemistry earlier. This team just seems to, those guys that he got just seem to fit better, fit what Brad wants to do. The personalities fit better. The locker room seems like it's better. And I'm not sure anybody expected Marcus, to be what he was, but he's turned out to be obviously an unbelievable get in the transfer portal. Have you seen the difference between last year and this year in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, let's take a step back with the portal. Let's say a Valley team might have 150 grand for the whole team. Just to put it in perspective, supposedly, I've never confirmed it, but what I've been told is like Purdue, every scholarship guy gets 100 grand. So you can see how we got Marcus to come up from Southern, and I'm sure he wanted to get to that next level or whatever. But he's transferred, and from a financial perspective, it's been a big payoff for him. So those are things that all of a sudden has shifted since the beginning when the NILs came out. Now, if you're a top tier player and you want to play in a league that has more exposure, you're going to go out and sort of test the waters and see what NILs you can get. So Illinois, we're not, maybe at the level of a Kentucky and everything, but because we're a Big Ten school and because we've got a good system set up, we're able to pay these guys, a significant amount of money. I don't know what each guy is getting paid, but it's a lot. And so in that regard, it really helps you with recruiting. And I think the first year when we did it, I think Brad was excited. He's used to being in a transfer portal system type thing because when he was with Bob Huggins a lot, that's what they did. They did a lot of junior college players. So he's very comfortable with that. I just thought this year they learned a lot from that first year with the NILs, and they've done a marvelous job, filling in the gaps. Quincy's playing a lot better. He got hurt beginning of the season, so he was sort of slow coming out. But when he's playing well, we're pretty much unstoppable at that spot because he can hit the 3-pointer. He can run the floor. He's a great offensive rebounder. Gives us another look, takes a little pressure off for some of the other guys. So I always thought he was a big part. He's slowed down here the last few games, but hopefully he can get back on track. But yeah, the portal system is something where the big schools, I'll call them, the football schools, can really leverage from that. And then basketball is a big benefit of the NILs, and it's seeing it now is it's interesting how it's transformed, and it's really helped us a lot. I mean, these guys have come in and have played huge minutes. Damascus playing almost 36 minutes a game, somewhere around there. I mean, he's just playing huge minutes for us, and he's an older guy and he's solid. And it's hard to win in the Big Ten, as you guys know, if you're a young team, and with us being older, it gives us a big advantage.
Yeah, for sure. One player I'm interested to ask you about, Doug, just because there's another guy we talk about all the time, and he gets a lot. He kind of polarizes the Illini fan base, if you will, and that's Coleman Hawkins. I think the guys who've played there before know how much he gets asked to do. It's part of the reason what you just said, right? He plays over 30 minutes a game. He hardly ever can come out because we don't really play a five. His defense is amazing, but he just plays with his heart on his sleeve. He's so emotional all the time, and he really seems like you talk to 100 basketball fans, 50% are like kind of roll their eyes when he gets brought up and expect him to do more, and the other 50% are, I think they see how big of an influence he has on the team. What's your take on his game? If did you think going into this season that he would have this type of role, or he would be more of like the Batman as opposed to Robin, or how has this year played out for him?
Yeah, that's a good question. I really didn't have a feel for him coming into this year. I thought last year he was doing a lot of positive things, and the coaching staff, continued to talk about it. I mean, some of the fans were like, "Well, he doesn't take care of the basketball sometimes," and he's not making many shots. Well, that's all changed this year. I mean, he has really, I think, found his sweet spot and much more comfortable working with Shannon and the rest of the guys. And that going back to everybody being on the same page. And he's playing out of position, as you know. You mentioned that he's not a five. He's got to guard the five guys, and so that's one of the reasons why when the big man comes up and sets that screen, and he sort of plays back and zones that area. But that's not really what his forte is. The coach has asked him to play five spot. He's done a good job. He's done a great job, I think. But I think. I like the way he's played this year. I would have said up till this year. Everybody talks about a lot of things that he does, and yeah, I just wanted to see more out of him. Only because if you're telling me he's a first rounder, I would expect him and to do what he's doing this year, which is hitting threes. He pops out. He passes the ball extremely well. It'd be great to see him and Dane out there more. Brad's talked about trying getting him out there, but I don't know if it's because of matchups or defense or whatever it is. But they just really haven't played a lot. Play a little high-low. I know he'd like to do that, but Hawkins' defense, his steals, everything he does, all those intangibles, he's great. And of course, he gets a little excited out there. I've seen it doing the radio. I've noticed the refs have been watching them lately, and I think there's been a consensus sometimes that they're going to put him on sort of a short leash. So he's gotten a couple quick technicals the last few games. And I think that's more of just sending a message to him. Hey, let's stick to basketball. Let's not get too crazy out here. And I think that's one area where as skilled as he is and as good as he is, the maturity part of it is he's still growing in that area. But he's done a good job of handling himself and being a good. I would say he's not a vocal leader in a sense, but he leads by example. The first one there, last one to leave. He puts the time in. He's a good role model for the younger guys. So there's a lot of things he does off the court, and the way he connects with his teammates. It's a positive thing, and he's leaving a good legacy for the younger guys. To see what it takes to win at this level.
How about as far as NCAA tournament run for this team, ceiling, etc.? We've talked about in episode past. We just love the way that this team's put together because we feel this year we've seen it. This team can win in multiple different ways, right? They can find ways to win if they're not shooting the ball well. They can get defensive stops when they need to. Their versatility, their athleticism. And the one thing I noticed, I went to Northwestern game when they played here, and I was talking to Bruce about this on the last podcast. I think we're a very physical team. We're one of the more physical teams in the Big Ten. Our size, our strength, and I think when we do that well and we use that physicality, we can really beat teams up. And we all know the Big Ten is a very physical league, but you know, NCAA tournament run, we know it's a lot of it's based on matchups, but I just feel like this team gets the right matchups with our firepower that we can make a legitimate run in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, the key is that we're shooting the ball well. We're running the floor. When we get to the offensive rebounds, we board and get out in transition. I mean, Shannon is as good as anybody in transition. So what happens? You guys, you understand the Big Ten can get compact a little bit, and once you get into towards the Big Ten tournament and then the NCAA tournament, it's a crapshoot. I mean, you got to get out there and play. You got to make baskets. You got to play well. Everybody's either trying to get to the tournament or upset you, and it's one and done from there on out. So this team, I think, if they can be physical and they don't foul, they're usually pretty good at keeping you off their free throw line in general. So that's a rarity, to be physical and not foul. So, and I think we can beat teams different ways. I mean, in the half court game, Damascus is as good as anybody with the booty ball backing down. You've got Shannon hitting outside threes now and running the floor, and he's a weapon. Hawkins has been around. These guys have all been in the NCAA tournament several years, so they know what to expect this year going in. They haven't had the success, so maybe that'll motivate them a little more. But I think this team is, even the experts really love this team, and that's because they can beat you in different ways, but they love to run the floor and rebound. And when they're doing that, they're really good. And the only thing that scares me a little bit, is a heavy senior guard oriented type team who can control us a little bit, take our time. A team that can take us a little bit out of rhythm. Those are the teams that sort of upset us, like Maryland when they came in. They just stuck to half court basketball and slowed us down, and we had to chase them for a whole 20 minutes in that second half. Those are the teams that Sam, that you talked about are a matchup nightmare for these guys a little bit, and that's when they struggle a little bit with. And Northwestern, they always play well at home, but it's good that we've gone against some different lineups in the Big Ten. And these guys have learned from it, and that's one thing about this team. I think more importantly than anything, they're a real smart team, and Brad's tried to push them to be a little bit more, not everything by the book. Be a little more creative out there. Don't be afraid to make a mistake. That's the way they were playing that first month. They're just trying to figure out the system a little bit more once you get out in front of 16,000 people. So I think these guys will be, they've got a little chip on their shoulder going into the tournament because they really haven't had a lot of success.
Yeah, that's all really good stuff. I think, you know, I think about the tournament for this team, and I think Brad's almost put himself in a weird position where, I don't think, unless something crazy happens, I don't think we're going to win the Big Ten. Purdue's already 2 games up. We still have to play them, so anything could happen there. But the crazy part for me comes in where the Illinois fan base, the Illinois faithful, the Illinois alumni really hold this program in such high regard, and they should. It's a blue blood, whatever you put that at, 10 top 20. But and there's no doubt he has the program in such a better spot than where he took it over. But basically, the way I'm saying this is weird is none of these games, like this season, is going to be defined by what happens in the NCAA tournament. Like for me, it's almost even tough to it's like it's tough to watch some of these conference games because it's like, yeah, they absolutely have to win this, but he's a victim of his own success and he's also a victim of the Loyola loss. A couple of those losses and honestly some bad luck with the year that COVID canceled the tournament. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but they were going to be a 1 or a 2 seed and won the Big Ten that year. Um, so he's got us in a great spot as a program, but there's just so much that we hear about second weekend. I just, I hope and pray that everything that he does with this roster is geared up towards whatever happens in this matchup we draw in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, Billy, you're correct. I mean, the year the COVID kicked in, we were on a roll. We were playing great, and the Big Ten tournament was canceled. And obviously, the NCAA tournament that hurt. That set us back a couple years because we had come from such a difficult period with Gross, and to then spend a couple years where Brad had to get his players in there. So we didn't have a lot of like continuity, going in with the tournament. It was sort of new for these guys. And then the second year, which really was their first year, Loyola was really really good, and they played defense as well as anybody in the country. And our guys, just got frustrated a little bit. And I think that's because that was their first tournament. They expected, hey, we're going to walk in there. And I've been through it where we almost got to the Final Four my sophomore year, and then I lost to Austin P my fifth year at Illinois because we had a young team. And I told the guys on my team, I said, listen, here everybody is good in the NCAA. There's no bad teams. So if you have a bad night, either one better get lucky. Because most of the teams are going to beat you. And Purdue lost last year in the first round as well. So there's a lot. The word they use, parity. There truly is a lot of parity. So you've got to show up. And I think these guys know that. They get that. Hawkins, has talked about it. So they're going into the tournament where I think they are. They're going to be ready to go. And I think last year's team was such a grind that just getting in the tournament and they were losing their chemistry and all that. You could just sort of see it. For whatever reason, they're losing their energy. This team, I think, they can't get too wound up. If they lose a few games here going down the stretch, doesn't really matter. You're going to be about a 3 or 4 seed. But in the tournament, it's going to be a whole different deal because the way we play and the way, the type of style that we play, we could go real deep in the tournament. This is a much more, I would say, dangerous team than even the last couple of years. So I feel like this team has got what it needs to take to go deep in the tournament. Last year's team, I just felt like with all the stuff going on in January, they had to change offenses. Changed all the, and it was just a full 180 all of a sudden in the middle of the season, and they were able to make it work through January, but they struggled in February, and it just carried over to March, and then they never really got the momentum. That's the thing, is you want to be peaking in March. Indiana, when I was at Illinois, Bobby Knight. If you beat him early in January, that was fine. But come end of February, end of March, his teams were playing as well as anybody in the country, and he always wanted him peaking at that time. He didn't really care much until they're working up to that point. So Michigan State is another team that's really hot. Again, that's what you want to do. So I think this team, again, with Shannon finally back and now everything getting back to normal, it'll be interesting what happens next couple of weeks.
How about as far as this team, and every team has their quote unquote weaknesses, their strengths, etc. But as far as our Achilles heel, Billy and I had talked a little bit. It is a team that doesn't have a quote unquote true point guard. Now that term has changed a lot over the years versus what it has been 10, 15 years ago because the game's changed so much. But what would you say about the Illini this year? What might be their Achilles heel? Headed in these last few weeks of the season.
I think number one is their post defense. They don't really have, Dane. They've tried to put Dane in there on the post, try to get real physical. Dane just is not making that conversion. Is just not making it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have that edge to him. Brad's tried to push him in there, and I think one's reason why maybe Dane hasn't played as much as he'd like or should. But a coach, I tell fans this all the time. It doesn't matter if you score 30 a night. It's changing a little bit, but when we all played, if you didn't play defense, you just didn't. Bruce Weber wasn't going to put you in. I mean, this is the way it is. Because and if you turn the ball over, you're not going to get in either. You're going to be sitting on the bench. So I think post play. Post defense is a real weakness for us. We don't double the post. Hawkins sometimes is exposed there. I'd like to give him a little more love defensively, but Brad talks a lot about the analytical stuff and looking at that. And I think that's one reason why we don't as much sometimes. And I think the second thing is if we get going brain dead here, like the point guard from Marquette, who's a great player.
Kolek.
The guy, those type of guys really
control tempo.
That's the guys that really are. We can't get them, making them uncomfortable. We just don't have that type of guard to throw at them right now. Shannon maybe can do a little bit of it. And I think the more he gets a little better in shape, even I think he's probably getting close to being 100%. Maybe we could throw him on there. But if we're switching on defense, and that goes back to what you guys talked about a few episodes, when we start switching on defense, they're just going to switch and then get the right matchup. Sam, like you talked about, Northwestern did that the whole second half, and we were trying to, and all of a sudden it'd be Luke guarding Boo Booey, and that's what they wanted, and then that creates stress on your defense, opens up the perimeter because you got to come over and help your teammate out and all that. So my point is, I think anything like that would give us a little, as they say in Italian, a little agita. You know what I mean? They'll give you a little heartburn. So, but I think those teams. But if we get downhill and we can rebound and we can run and we can attack, I mean, we're putting up some big numbers here in the Big Ten, which is typically a high scoring conference, and we're coming into town and we're like big gunslingers. We're scoring 80, 90 points even on the road. So it's a fun game. It's a fun team to watch. Having done the broadcast, they when we're clicking on all offense, it's a lot of fun to watch.
For sure. As president of the Glue Guy fan club, like Sam has dubbed me as, I have to give a shout out to Ty Rodgers, who's one of my favorite players, just like a physical monster. Even as a sophomore, he just dominates games with his rebounding, his defense. I'm curious, Doug. One answer we've never really been able to get. We're not super close to it, but it seems like Brad has sat him down a couple times in the second half. It just, especially Northwestern. I thought you brought up the Ohio State game earlier with Terrence Shannon. I thought Ohio State was Ty Rodgers' best game of the season. One, why does he get sat down like that in favor of Harmon and Goody? And two, do you think he has the tools to make that jump to the next level and be an NBA guy? Because I sure see it, and I'm curious if other people are seeing that someday for him as well.
So in regard to the playing time, I think it's more about the matchup. So and Ty was playing a lot of minutes, and they're physical. He's rebounding. He's picking up 50-50 balls. He's his offensive rebounding is phenomenal. They put centers to guard him because he can't shoot supposedly, but he's pretty much shredded that defense what the other opposing coaches are doing. So there's some adjustments they've had to make defensively. I think he's been caught on that ball screen that with the big man coming up at the top of the key, that with a middle ball screen. So that he's been getting stuck on that a little bit. So I think he's brought Harmon in to try to defensively get a little quicker guy in there. So Harmon has but he's been playing more minutes. So I think that's part of it. I think Goody, he needs in there sometimes because he's got to get some, when they run that ball action that high ball screen as well. Goody comes off the weak side and he's wide open a lot of times. So, he likes him in there for shooting. And so I think what happens is Ty, there's different things going on out there, and he gets sometimes the short end of the stick. But I think a lot of guys, about a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people were like, "Well, what's going on here?" So he has been playing more, since
Yeah.
that. But yeah, the energy he brings, he brings the lunch bucket every day, and he is a hardworking guy, and he gets after it. And I think the way he plays and how hard he plays, I think it's okay to get him on the bench and give him a little rest and get back in there because he lays it all out there when he's out there.
For sure.
And I think
So,
I think too the next level, I think he's got an NBA body. From a skill perspective, he has made huge advancements, like from free throw shooting, handling the basketball. He surprised me. I didn't think he could do as well as he's done. And he's really taken a lot of pressure off us on the point guard position. We really haven't even the three of us talked today, or some of the fans, we really haven't talked about not having a point guard, a true point guard.
right.
And that's where I got to give Brad and his staff credit, because that's a real tough place to be if you're a coach trying to figure out who's going to be the quarterback out there.
Yeah, and I haven't seen
For sure.
I haven't seen many instances this year where it's really been glaring that oh, we don't have a point guard. There's a little bit in that Michigan State game late down the stretch there, some entry passes. We had a few turnovers in a row. I'm not sure a true point guard would totally change that outcome. I just think it makes people more comfortable in their positions. But there was a lot more obviously in that game down the stretch than just not having a point guard. But my guy for this team, and I've said it all year, I think, Terrence Shannon Jr. gives you what he gives you. He's back in a rhythm. We love what Marcus does, but I've always said it was Coleman Hawkins is kind of the X factor on this team, the way he plays, the positionless basketball that he plays. And you mentioned earlier, Doug, how Brad really likes this team to be instinctual. It doesn't seem like it's a lot of, set actions, that they run offensively. And they're at their best when you said they're getting out in transition, they're getting on the break. These guys are getting downhill, getting to their spots, or these guys are, playing booty ball and getting in their comfort zone. But I think Coleman Hawkins, in my opinion, is just a guy that he can do so much on the court. He presents such a matchup problem. You mentioned it. I think he's an unbelievable passer for a guy that size. His feel and his instincts at that size are great. And when he's shooting the ball well, when he can pick and pop and shoot the ball well, it really opens everything up for this team.
Yeah, he's like I call it a third option. The first option is you got the mask, and then you got Shannon. Those two guys are definitely have stepped up offensively, and they're our number one and number two pitchers. But the thing about Hawkins is because he can shoot the three and he can roam out there, and he can pass. He's got great vision. He said, that's when he is feeling it, where he can, get those feet set, look at the rim, and or pass it. So I've really, Brad's even talked about that they actually passed too much a little bit. I think there was a game, it was Michigan State game where, Coleman was wide open. He just had to go up and dunk it. He kicked it to the perimeter for an open three. There was nobody there. He sort of threw the ball out of bounds, which we ended up doing a couple more times and caused easy buckets for Michigan State. But yeah, he's when he plays like he's playing like a first round draft pick. We can run with anybody in the country, and I just hope that that he can. What I was trying to say here, I'm hoping he can accept and not let, the more he gets playing better and better, that he'll stay in the zone and just stick to the basics and not get caught up in the whole emotion part of it, because that's one of the negative things about Coleman is sometimes he gets too, he's all in and everything else. So I hope that as well as he's playing now, that he can continue to be consistent, and then from being a little bit more mature out there, because we really need him out there. And so if he gets in foul trouble, or if he gets technical, or he gets sort of caught up with the whole energy of what's going on, then he can hurt us a little bit. So when he's on all cylinders, which he's been playing so well all year, we're a whole different team, especially offensively. We just give you another twist.
Yeah, that's all really good points. I think there's, as I look up, there's 5 minutes, 20 seconds left in the first half, and Illini trailing by 2 points. So it's death taxes and Illinois struggling. Illinois struggling with Michigan lately in the Big Ten. I don't think I like to bring it up, but we could just play Sam Maniscalco's Maryland game at Maryland game. That one. What was that? 27 there, Sam?
I don't remember.
I'm
No, I sure do. It was
but what
26.
How did you
And
guys
then it was
do against?
then it was downhill after that.
So how did you? Because we have really struggled. Brad has struggled with Maryland. We just
Yeah.
That
have.
was before too. Maryland was in the Big Ten. That was the Big Ten ACC Challenge that we went there.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so
Yeah.
they weren't a conference opponent. That probably helped too because they probably didn't scout us that well and didn't know who this little 5'11" white point guard was. And
Did you guys?
I was able to hide a little bit and make some shots.
Did you? Do you guys go to College Park? Is that where you get?
Yeah,
You play there?
yeah. That was a cool place to play.
Yeah,
It
it
was
is.
a neat place to play.
Their fans they're good fans and they support the team and they're loud and it's a tough place to win. Maryland is they've got some good players. I mean, they were picked up to be at the top of the Big Ten and talk about chemistry and not being connected. They just haven't gotten on the same page all year, and although they're very talented, they're just having a hard time getting W's in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I saw Holtman got canned from Ohio State, right?
Yeah,
Did I?
we did that game in Columbus. I don't think they said there was 8, 10,000 people there or whatever it was. There was lucky to have 7,000, 6,000 people
Wow.
there. Yeah, it was. He had a tough year last year, and they were going in this year, and they had high expectations there, and they just can't get it. Can't get it going, and there wasn't anybody there. You could just feel the whole energy, and it didn't have a good vibe there. I was surprised that it didn't wait till after the season, but they got a new AD there, and I think he wants to put his guy in there. So it wasn't gonna, he was gonna get fired at the end of the season anyway. So they gave him his welcome papers. But
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you think
that's
about? Do you think Jawan will be there next year?
I think he'll be in the NBA. I do. I think the NBA is a great place for him.
Yeah.
And I think he's a good coach. He's been around. He knows how to coach the game. It's just college. You've got to wear so many different hats in college. And in the NBA, you can just be a coach and not worry about player personnel too much or any of that. And I think that's unfortunately for him, he's had a little, unlucky. Dickinson went over to Kansas, and he's had some injuries, and all of a sudden, bam, you're struggling to get a victory in the Big Ten. So, I would expect him, moving to the NBA. I think that's a better fit for him.
And then Doug, how about some of your favorite memories playing at Illinois, places to play, teams played against, games, anything that stands out?
I mean, a couple. My sophomore year, we won the Big Ten championship. We went 15-3. It was a spectacular year. We back then, I think they only had 48 teams in the tournament. So we went up to Milwaukee. We beat Villanova, and then we played Maryland. Maryland had won the ACC. They were ranked, I don't know, maybe a top 3 team, or they were one of the top teams in the country. And they had Len Bias, who was on that team, who was, some argue, as athletic as Michael was. And we beat them barely. And then we played Kentucky and at Rupp Arena. Believe it or not, that was the bizarre part was we were in the Elite Eight. We were playing a home game against Kentucky. They changed the rules since then. So we had to beat them in front of 22,000 people, but we came close. So that was a great year. It was really special. The next year, my junior year, was a lot of fun. I had gotten hurt, and then I came back and had a good NCAA tournament. We played Georgia Tech. We lost to them in the East Regional. Georgetown at that time was, a force with Patrick Ewing. And, back then, Jordan stayed all 3 years in school. Ewing stayed all 4 years. Most of the guys stayed all 4 years,
Mm-hmm.
believe it or not. So it was a little bit, different. North Carolina had Worthy, um, Perkins. I'm trying to think. They had four guys on the Michael Jordan. Forget the four. They had four guys. Well, three of the four were starters were in the NBA, and the top three were top 50 all-time great players. So North Carolina was just loaded. I mean, the disparity. I mean, the difference between the top teams and just the middle teams was a big step. So, but it was the Big Ten was great. I mean, we loved playing at Indiana, Purdue. We loved playing there. We didn't have a lot of success at Purdue. Purdue was, and I just remember trying to win on the road in the Big Ten was so hard, and our goal was every year is try to split or do a little better than that. Try to win those games, and then at home, you just didn't lose at home, and
Yeah.
we only lost of the 4 or 5 years there. We didn't lose at home at all, and because you can't afford to in the Big Ten, but the Bobby Knights of the world, the Gene Cadies of the world, they don't make them like that anymore. And it was fun to be around that. Judd Heathcote, these guys, were true basketball coaches. They started making hardly anything, and they didn't make that much money back then, even, believe it or not. But now it's changed a lot. Because of the money and everything. But yeah, I mean, just being around all those, Lute Olson, who was at Iowa when I was there, he won a national championship. Judd Heathcote won one. Bobby won a couple or won three. Katie owned the Big Ten, and he did great. Just didn't do great in the tournament. So the coaching was pretty intense, and that's what I remember. Bobby Knight, ranting and raving, and Katie chasing. Trying to, one year we were beating them by about 40 at home, and Gene had gotten upset. And when he got upset, he starts talking to the players. And we had a guy named Scott Mentz on our team, and Scotty was from Kankakee area. And Scotty started talking a little bit back to him, and Gene's like, okay, you know what? Next thing I know it, Katie is chasing Scott down the tunnel to to express his difference of him talking to him. So he wanted to beat him up. So it was pretty funny. We had to hold Gene back, but those were the crazy days. You know what I mean? That stuff now, everybody would, everybody's a lot more serious right now. But
Yeah.
back then, it was a lot of fun. It was a little more relaxed, and everything now is just so much more scrutiny on these kids. And we didn't have phones back then, so it was just a different world back then. But it was. I tell my kids, they said, "Dad, how do you exist without a phone?" I said, "You know what? It was pretty nice. I tell you."
Yeah. I was gonna say.
Ever. But the game has changed a lot, but it hasn't changed a lot. And watching you guys play, I did the television, and to see all the different players, all the great players who've come through Illinois, and the tradition, and how much the fans just love and support the program. It's great to see what Brad's done. We're going to be in the upper half of the Big Ten. We're going to be ranked usually. And he's really done a great job from that perspective, because it's hard when you're at the bottom and you're trying to get back up to the top. It's not that easy, because the Big Ten network now leveled the playing field. So, Northwestern makes just as much as we do, and Ohio State, we're all pretty much on the same page when it comes to having revenue for the program. So it makes it a more even playing field, which I think is a good thing. But yeah, my favorite place to play on the road was probably Indiana. I always liked those rims there. Billy, I don't know how you liked them, but they just seemed like that the ball went in a little bit easier there for some reason.
That might have been the only place in the Big Ten I never hit a three at, but I think I always blamed it on the fact that they uses the Adidas ball, so I have a built-in excuse there. Like when someone hands you a golf ball that's not a Titleist, for a good shooter, that's a big difference, right?
So I want to ask: were you playing when you guys used the girls' basketball for about 3 or 4 minutes? Were you on the team then? We were talking about that.
Yeah, I actually, people ask me a lot of time that's probably the craziest thing that you could never dream up in a million years. But we actually played like I think it was like 4 to 6 minutes of a real game with a girls' ball, and I airballed a three. I shot it about into the Orange Crush tuba hole, and Wayne McLean was bitching at me in the timeout like he always did because I was his recruit, and so he's telling me something, and all of a sudden I see Tisdale is taking the ball out of bounds, and he's yelling at the ref, and I'm like, why is he yelling at the? Tisdale was pretty calm, but Tisdale had actually tried to get the ref's attention, and he like waved him off and ignored him, and he said, no, this ball's not right. And finally, he went and got Coach Weber and said, look, this is a 27.5 or something, or a 28.5 basketball. And I was probably, I think, I'm the only NCAA basketball game in the world that played with a girls' ball for 4 to 6 minutes.
Yeah, Brian Barnhart, who does the play-by-play all these years, he loves that story. He talks about it all the time, and he said you guys were all yelling at Coach. He said something's wrong with the ball. It's too small. I think it's and he didn't believe you guys. He's like, just keep playing. It's fine.
Yeah, that's why Tisdale had to take the ball and put it in his face because, the coaches all thought it was some bullshit excuse because we were all 0 for 6 from the field. And unbelievable that could possibly happen. But I was talking about that the other day, the fact that they let Wisconsin play with a Sterling branded basketball for so long, and Michigan played with the Rock. They don't do it anymore. But I just thought I always have felt like that is such an underrated home court advantage to play with a one-off brand of basketball, and no one has ever brought it up besides me. But the week before we went to Wisconsin, we used to have to roll out like the Sterling brand balls, and they're like pieces of shit. It's unbelievable how bad those balls are. And anyways, it was like no wonder that they were like 103 and 7 at home under Bo Ryan. He was a great coach, and it didn't have that much to do with it. But I do, there's a lot of truth said in jest. I always hated shooting with the Adidas basketball, and I hated shooting with the Sterling basketball. And I actually made a few at the Cole Center, never made one at Indiana though.
Yeah, no, it's funny you brought that up because a lot of back when we played too, everybody had you had all the different types of basketballs, and they were always a little inconsistent. And then I always liked one that was a little bit wasn't brand new out of the box. I wanted a little bit, with some scratches on it, or it's been used a little bit versus the newer ones. But yeah, I just that we talk about that all the time. So I had to see if you were a part of that game.
Unfortunately, yes. Go ahead, Sam.
I have one last question. Who's got more points at Richwoods?
I have no idea.
Official.
I have no idea.
I'm going to say Doug probably does. Doug had Coach K in his living room. I never had Coach K in my living room. I read that in an article when I was prepping for this. I thought two things were interesting with that article: the Coach K in your living room story, and then Doug brought up what was basically my exact childhood because Doug said, and I didn't know this until I read it, but Doug's dad also played football at Illinois. So if you're listening to this, my dad played on the 80 to 84 Rose Bowl team, and Doug said his dad played football at Illinois. And he went down to way more football games than he ever went to basketball games. And the team was so horrible that they'd always be in the parking lot tailgating instead of in the game. And that was literally, I mean, you look at the early 2000s Illini football team, that was my childhood in a nutshell. So I always thought that was super interesting.
Yeah, we were Hyle Stout, who was another great player. He played with my dad back in the 50s. And Hiles and my dad would go to the game. So we get there early, and we would, get a couple of buddies, and we'd play catch. And we'd go in probably middle of the first quarter, and we'd watch the game. And, of course, back in the 70s, Illinois football was pretty rough. And by the third quarter, Chiefs got done doing his dance. Third quarter, we're getting crushed. We go back out to the parking lot and hang out for a little bit, and then the fourth quarter, a fourth period, we'd be on I-74 driving back, and my dad's like, "Got to beat the traffic, Doug."
For sure.
Okay, Dad.
Yeah.
And so we listened to the game, and I'd sit in the back seat and listen to my dad and Hiles talk about, their playing days, and it sort of set the seed that I wanted to play college athletics, football, basketball. So just listening to their relationship and their bond, and they were good friends living in Peoria. I thought that was pretty cool to sit in the back of the car and just listen to those guys tell the funny stories about them on the road and the Judson twins and all this. So, it's a big family. You guys are a part of it. Brad's done a great job of welcoming all of us back anytime. He's really honored us in the past and done a lot of good things. And I've got no complaints with him and his staff, and they work hard. And he was. We were talking a little bit about the NILs and this transfer portal thing, and he was talking to Roy Williams at North Carolina, and he was telling me a story. He said, Roy's like, you got the season, and then you're recruiting. He said you needed a month or so just to get a little downtime, where you're not trying to put your finger in the dike there to just to try to get a recruit or this or that. So there's no, as soon as the season's over, Brad's like, hey, listen, it's like starting all over again. We've got transfer, we've got kids graduating, and blah blah blah. So it's it's 24/7, it's 365 days a year. So it's a little bit different. I've tried to get Brad to come up and play a little bit of golf, and it seems like every year he's got something going on, whether they're traveling to Italy or they're trying to get some recruits, or they got stuff going on. So it's they got it's a little different world. When we got done playing in March, after tournament, we had usually April and May where we didn't really do anything. We would just sort of recover. And these guys, I'm sure you probably did as well. You go, as soon as the season's over, maybe a week off, but you're going right back at it, and getting back into the gym and working on your game.
Yeah, I still feel the effects of that when I get out of bed in the morning. I'm serious. It's like individuals 10 days later after the season,
Yes. Yeah. Speaking of which, is your dad getting his knee replaced? I heard through the grapevine. Is he going to get taken care of?
Well, he's a big dumb animal. We had him scheduled to get his knee replaced, and we had to cancel it because he went down to the beach with my kids and got his knee right there where the incision site would be. He got his knee all scratched up. So it's just typical. But man,
well, you guys, young bucks. I'm a few years behind your dad, so I'll be getting probably one of my knees replaced. But so far, so good. But I can feel it coming here. It's inevitable.
For sure. All right, Sam, you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, Doug. Thanks a ton for getting on. That was awesome. Obviously, hearing your perspective and your stories and stuff. Like you said, we're Billy and I are super excited. It's a really fun team to watch, and we're excited to see what this team can do down the stretch here. Through the rest of February and early March into the Big Ten tournament and whatnot. So, awesome stuff. Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks
for having me. Appreciate you guys both having me on, and it was great talking to you and catching up, talking about the good old days. You guys were not only great players, but it sounds like you guys got a nice family, and you got congrats on your kids, and that's what's really important. So just keep doing what you're doing, and have fun at what you're doing, and go Illini.
Awesome, go
Illini.
Thanks,
Doug.